Welcome to Early Childhood Chapters, the podcast from Griffin House Books, where we dive into the latest research and best practices for early childhood educators. I'm your host, Emily Garman. Today, I'm joined by Dr. Angela Searcy, educator, consultant, and author of Push Past It, A Positive Approach to Challenging Classroom Behaviors, and Elevating Equity, Advice for Navigating Challenging Conversations in Early Childhood Programs. Together, we'll explore the challenges and opportunities in early childhood education, offering practical strategies to support young learners and the adults who care for them. Let's get started. Welcome to Early Childhood Chapters. I'm Emily Garman. Today I have with me Dr. Angela Searcy, who is the author of 2 books with Griffin House, which we'll talk about here in just a minute. So we're fresh off her EdWeb last week, which was Pushing Past Conflicts with Adults, Navigating Uncomfortable Conversations in Early Childhood. And we wanted to bring her back in for a podcast episode because there were a lot of questions at the end of the EdWeb, and we didn't get quite enough time to answer them all, and some that we just wanted to dig into a little bit further. So Dr. Searcy said she is game and will come back in. So Dr. Searcy, give us a little introduction about yourself, and we'll, of course, link back to the EdWeb and the notes that you refer to in our conversation today. But let's hear a little bit about you, and then we'll get into the questions.
All right. Oh, my gosh. Thank you, Emily, for having me. It's always a pleasure to be here with you and with Griffin House. A little bit about me. I began as an educator in 1990 in the Yellow Room. So I've taught all age levels, infants, toddlers, twos, preschool. I've taught 6th grade, 8th grade, 9th grade. And I have a BA in English and Secondary Ed, a Master of Science in Early Childhood Development, a doctorate in education. I'm working on that 4th degree in child law and policy. And I've been a teacher, I've been a therapist, and currently I'm so happy to be an author with Griffin House and also an educational consultant and mental health consultant.
And in your spare time, no, doesn't sound like you have very much spare time. That's fantastic. So you did an EdWeb last week, which was a great webinar illustrating some of your strategies for dealing with difficult conversations in the classroom with other adults. So with parents, with staffers, with principals and assistant principals. And those were really the questions, that specific area, that a lot of teachers who attended the EdWeb had. They were curious about, like a big one we got was, well, what do I do when my principal won't listen? And this is maybe a teacher who has something they want to implement in the classroom, or they want to try something new with the student, and their admin, for whatever reason, is just not on board. And as you and I were talking about before we started recording, as we know with kids, sometimes they're listening. That doesn't mean they're going to do what we want them to do. So it's a little bit different. But can you share with us some more strategies? Because this is an area you have really dialed in on this, how to push past this barrier of, well, I want to do something, but my admin is not on board. What do I do?
Oh my gosh, that is such a good question, something that I've experienced many times. So to your point, listening is a little bit different than action. Someone could be processing what you're saying, and that could take weeks or months to do that. I have a tool that kind of help us think about that, and it's called buy-in. It's literally called what you want. It's called buy-in. So few things to think about as we look at the acronym, and that acronym is in tools that we're going to share out. So you'll get you don't have to take a million notes. If you forget something, it's okay. B is beware of an amygdala hijack. Be aware that sometimes when we're discussing, and I know it seems silly, but even if we're discussing something as simple as like how we do something in the classroom, that can elicit a stress response. I know. It seems extreme, but it can happen that, whoa, I'm feeling stressed, as you mentioned, implementing X or implementing Y. So perhaps we often think about the logic, we think about the information, but we forget about the emotion. Maybe that administrator's worried that this will lead to chaos. Maybe they're concerned that it doesn't align with your curriculum or some kind of quality assessment. So first of all, understanding if what we're asking or what we're saying is eliciting a stress response or a worry for that other person. really thinking about understanding their perspective. So it really is that you of understanding them. I know it's tough because we want them to do what we say, but the goal of any healthy conversation is actually not always for them to do what you say, but to hear what you say, to process it, and to understand them. What is their logic? What is their thinking? Active listening. So, really thinking about active listening is really important. So it's really kind of like asking before you tell someone to try to understand. So active listening is really key for, giving affirmation, having a really good discussion before you start inserting your own ideas, right? And just really just getting into their logic, their thoughts. Once you get to that point and you hear in active listening their logic, their thoughts, then you can ask them if they wish to hear your thoughts and then using their thoughts as a springboard for your thoughts. So if you want to implement something like Wellness Wednesdays, let's just say that, and then your administrator isn't hearing you, really trying to dig at why they don't want to implement it. What's the challenge? What's the issue? And saying, okay, I get it. That would take time away from this, or you're worried about this. I'm thinking about how we could solve that together, or if we could as a team come together. So thinking about inserting our ideas and then with permission, right? And maybe it's a good idea to do Wellness Wednesday, but not now. Maybe it's a future idea, And then lastly, negotiating the ups and downs. We may try something and then step back away from it. See that trying new ideas, even good ones, can lead to chaos. So really understanding that it's a back and forth. Let's reflect. Let's take time. So buy-in is, be understanding that, if it's, being aware if there's a stress response, you just kind of understanding, active listening. Why is just really, before we get to our ideas, really taking time to listen to the other person's ideas, for listening for the yes, hearing the yes. There's a yes in there somewhere often that we're missing. And then inserting our ideas based off of someone else's logic and putting those together. And then just being able to know that it could be an up and down. It may not be a perfect straight line as we do implementation.
I like that part that you said about asking their permission. Do you want to hear my ideas? Do you want to hear my feedback on that? That gives them some power to say yes or no. And I mean, most of the time, hopefully, people are going to say yes. I want to hear your opinion. I want to hear your idea. But that gets them to say a yes, which is kind of a hurdle to get past on the way to getting a bigger yes that you want. So they've already said, yes, I want to hear what you have to say. And that's kind of primed them to say, well, yes, I see what you're saying. Let's try it.
Yeah. And it does, like, to your point, gives them the option to say no. Oh my gosh, we're going through a federal review. We're going through, like, I can't take one more thing right now. So it's really giving, like, do you have space for this?
Mm-hmm.
Or how can we make space if they don't? Maybe that space will come in a week or a few days. So I agree, giving power to the person that you're talking with.
So how about with coworkers, with other teachers? The dynamic is very similar in that you're dealing with another adult, but there isn't maybe the power imbalance that you might have with a principal or another admin. Maybe this is a co-teacher. Maybe it is someone, teaching another grade, but you need the buy-in. So any tweaks to that when we're talking with a peer, a colleague versus someone who is our superior?
I don't think there are many tweaks. So I have the tool buy-in. I have another tool called the adult meaning making machine. And again, it's just like, I have this idea of doing, changing our nap time routine. And we're co-teachers. And it's just really like, how do you feel about that? I think sometimes we go right to, well, we should change it because this, and go right into logic. But again, change can elicit fear or stress or, overwhelm. It could elicit, or it could be happy, or it could be anxiety. We don't know. So I think one of the big pieces is that we forget how the brain works. And I go back to the amygdala. It's one of my favorites. I call amygdala Amy G. Dalla, because that's how I learned how to spell.
I was going to say, when you did that webinar, that is the day I learned to spell it also. So thank you.
So I love giving this persona to emotions, my emotions, your emotions, because it's not me. It's just Amy G that's doing this. And I think once we get to that, because emotion will dictate how that's followed through. If you're feeling anxious because you're changing the nap time routine, then that's going to dictate how that nap time routine, right, is followed, or the suggestions are followed. Or if you're feeling overwhelmed, or you're feeling excited, like if you're feeling excited, you could feel that, and that's going to dictate what happens next. So I think with colleagues, with supervisors, and with families, we forget to say, I have this idea. What's your first thought? What's your first emotion around that idea? You may understand the logic of something, but then the emotion around it, I feel paralyzed. I feel like I can't move forward, or I'm frozen, or, or no, I'm in denial. I do not want to hear one. I do not want to hear one more idea about nap time, kind of thing. So, emotion and your relationship. The relationship really means a lot, because I've had that happen where they love something that someone who's their bestie is saying, and then you present the exact same idea, and it's like, So relationships really also set the tone. And you could say, you know what, we haven't always had the best relationship. I'm wondering if we can, just lay it out on the table. Do you mind if we, kind of like do some repair? What could I do? What could I do to repair that? Is there nothing? Okay, what could I do? But we're in this work environment, right? So there has to be something as professionals. We have something that is pulling a professional responsibility to collaborate and to work together. So yes, I get you. I mean, you could take a break for sure. Like feel free to take a break from me. But as professionals, what is our professional responsibility to collaborate and to work together? And I think that's just some ideas. Mm-hmm.
I think with the active listening too, you get some more information to understand what their barrier is to it. And then once you have some more information because you've listened well, that can help you, I don't want to say, build your argument better, but it helps you understand where they're coming from and where their resistance is coming from.
Absolutely. So people listen to their words. And often more than your words. So if you're really listening to that person and you use their words, I'll write little notes. I'm just like, I just want to make sure I capture everything that you're saying. And I'm just like, really, and I ask follow-up questions. So what you're saying is that this sounds like really overwhelming right now, and I'm using those exact words because that's most powerful and most effective. So, I'm not saying that. I guess what I'm saying, these are evidence-based strategies. We have evidence-based strategy. Come on, everybody. Come on, everyone's heard this word before. We've had evidence-based strategies for children and things that we agree on in the field of education that are best practice. What are our best practices with adults? How is that connected to research and evidence-based strategies, or some kind of theoretical framework? Are we just telling it like it is? And how does that fit with theory and research? And the ideas that I have, framework that I put together in the 2 books, give us the theory that and also some practical actions. So I hope that puts the 2 together.
It does. And I want to remind everybody listening too that in the EdWeb, you go into a lot more detail and information about the amygdala, about Amy G. Dalla. So if people want to get some more background on that, they should definitely go listen to the EdWeb because there's a lot in there. One thing that people came with a lot of questions around this topic of, what do I do when there's somebody on my staff or a colleague or an admin who just doesn't want to do anything differently or hear any different ideas because we've always done it this way, or it's always been this way, or it's always been like this. And that's a challenge that a lot of folks are coming up against, and wondered a lot of the strategies you've shared will work in that situation too, particularly hearing and actively listening to what people's concerns are and echoing that back to them. Any other tips for that kind of scenario?
Absolutely. I have a scenario that I talk about in the book. It's called, I think the title that it has is Worksheet Warfare. I know, woo. And I remember going into a classroom as the observer, and the teacher, well, in this program, they use developmentally appropriate practice. So there's no worksheets that are used there. And I come in and I see this teacher's wonderful. She's so caring and giving. So don't get me wrong, she's great. And I just noticed these worksheets, and I just say, the first thing I say is like, it's not developmentally appropriate. It's not allowed. I do that. Then, okay, then I come back again, and lo and behold, what do I see? Worksheets. so I said, oh, remember our last discussion? I mean, you're doing great. You're very responsive, right? The whole thing. You're doing some good stuff. But that worksheet thing, let's toss those out. I went back a third time. I was like, you know what? I'm seeing a worksheet. So then I sat with her and I said, Angela, you got to do your evidence base, because I'm getting stressed and triggered by something that I don't think is developmentally appropriate, right? So I'm just kind of like pushing it to the side. So I come and I sit with her, and she's such a great teacher, and I share how great she is. And then I say, I noticed you really like worksheets. And she's like, I do. and I'm kind of dying inside. I want to be honest. I'm kind of dying inside because it's a trigger for me, right? And so I'm listening to her, and I might have been itching a little bit as I'm listening, and I was just like, okay. And then she's saying like, I've used these before. I've had families come to me and say to me, my child went to kindergarten and they did really well. And then I'm listening to everything that she's saying. And I said, well, is there more that you want to share? And she's like, she just gets this light in her eyes. Right? Here I am just itching. I need calamine lotion at this point as I'm listening. And then I say to her, I was like, so you've seen some success with worksheets. And I'm wondering if you would see more or the same success by doing this same activity this way. And I wonder if we could talk about that. Would you like to explore that? And then after her, I think I lighted up her world when we talked about something she cares about. Then she said, I wouldn't mind hearing what you have to offer. Listening begets listening. And so, yes, I was itching. Yes, I felt uncomfortable hearing something, but her eyes, here's the thing. She could have achieved success, but we don't know if it was from the worksheets. She's a great teacher. So could it have been from something else? Could we have explored that? Like, how was she successful? In this case, what we explored was, could we do this in a different way, hands-on? And she just, after I listened to her, we kind of had this rapport with one another. And I repeated back what she said. You've had success. I summarized it. You've done well. I just wonder if we can add to your great practice. Would this add to something to do this in a different way? And she's like, maybe. So yes, I felt uncomfortable, and you will too. But once you really take time with someone, and I listened for a long time. I didn't listen for 2 minutes. I didn't listen for 3 minutes. I really asked her, is there more you want to say? I summarized, I repeated. And when I was doing that, she's like, you get me. She's like, you get me. That's my jam. And then it's just like, and it just tiptoe. Can you maybe try this one tweak? Or what do you think about that? Or how does that make you feel? And she kind of got excited. She got excited by that, trying something new. So how can you build that excitement? Motivation isn't something we have, it's something you can create if you just have the right words and you have right steps. You may need a little if you have, and also calamine lotion. If you might need some of that too.
One last question. One of the things you talked about a lot in the webinar when you talked about the amygdala, and I think may come in here, is the kind of fight or flight response. And a couple of people asked a question that was similar around that. Like if they come to this was, I think, from an admin, when they come to their staff and their teachers, if they have to deliver criticism or correction or something, then they're met with this fight or flight response, and they aren't sure what they can do to help soften that or help something adjust in their communication style so that response isn't provoked. So this person, I think, is realizing like, hey, I'm the problem. It's me. It's something about my delivery that's provoking this response in people. And you shared so many things about already how to communicate, about listening. But how do we talk to folks who we need to give criticism to, or we need to give correction to, without provoking that response?
Oh my goodness, what a great question. So this is a lot of what I do. I am going in classrooms and observing classrooms and giving. So I have a very specific, again, strategy based off of evidence-based research. Motivational interviewing is one of the theoretical frameworks that I use about behavior change. Clinicians use this, doctors, nurse, most people don't take their medicine. So doctors use this as well. And they get flight and fright, that freeze when they go into the doctor's office. So when I have to go in, and first thing I mentioned earlier is I give glows. I heard this at a conference. I did not originate it, but it's called Glows and Grows. So the first thing I come in is I give glows. What are you doing well? And this is not me necessarily softening. I need to specifically look at and observe what they're doing well so I can build on it, and they can keep doing it. A lot of times, they're like, I didn't know what I did that was good because I'm in the midst of in the classroom, or families don't know what they're doing. So saying like, you really came in and you bent down to your child's level, like actually hearing these words. I type out my observations of just what I see and hear. And I have educators read that when I do their feedback session. So I don't interpret anything. They read exactly. I don't say anything. I say, read this for me, because then they're interpreting on their own. So I don't say anything that's a subjective phrase, such as, you were happy. I just list, you laughed, right? Right. And so there's no interpretation there until they're interpreting it. Then after they read their glows, then I ask them about their mental health, because I'm doing mental health observations many times. And so I ask them about how they're doing. And then I ask, is there something I missed? Oh man, they're like, yes, I did this and I did that. And is there something you're proud of? And they appreciate that I know that I'm missing something. And then when I work with educators, I then have on the sheet, are you ready for grows? And even Michael Jordan had a coach. You know what I mean? Like it doesn't mean that you're doing anything wrong. These are things that I'm suggesting. And based off of the things I'm suggesting that tie with your curriculum, that tie with your quality assessment, and I've given that, what out of these things do you want to try, or do you want to focus on? And then that power goes back to them on what they want to focus on, and what's important. And it does tie. I have to say, to your point earlier, most of the time people take the things that I wrote there, or sometimes they'll add to it. So, which is interesting. And I think that I had teachers, when I came, they were excited. They were like, I'm so happy you're coming to observe. It's non-judgmental. I'm looking for your strengths. They're there. And then I'm looking for opportunities for growth. And one thing that I implemented this year that I've done in the past that I'm really excited about, they do it back to me. So they have to give me, at the end of our session, they have to give me my glows and grows. And you know what? One thing I would say, it's been the best thing I've read all year. When I felt really down, I read them and felt really, they were kind to me. They said, this is what you do really well, and here are your opportunities. So it's kind of like a bi-directional, right, exchange where I'm learning from them and they're learning from me. And I just, like I said, went to a school and they were like, we were so excited you were coming. And I was like, me too. I can't wait to see what's happening in your classroom. And don't forget to give me my, areas, like what trash you be doing. And, and it's actually been motivating to me this year to see their glows for me, that I get it right back. I get whatever I give, I get right back. The same thing with families. If I have to do an observation of a child with some challenging behaviors, I can't wait to see your child. I can't wait to see their strengths. And I know we may find some opportunities of growth, but won't it be great to see your child in action? What a gift that I get to do that. So I think it's that humility, empathy, and reciprocity are some key things.
Thank you so much, Dr. Searcy. This has been a great follow-up to your EdWeb. I encourage everybody to check out the resources that you've placed in the QR code and down in the show notes, as well as to go back and view the link to the Ed webinar that's totally free, and you can get some CE credits as well for that. So thanks again for your time, Dr. Searcy. Really appreciate having you on the podcast today.
All right. Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
A big thank you to Dr. Angela Searcy for sharing her insights and expertise with us today. If you'd like to learn more, you can find her books, Push Past It and Elevating Equity, at griffinhouse.com. If you enjoyed this conversation, be sure to subscribe to the podcast wherever you get podcasts so you never miss an episode. And if you found this discussion helpful, share it with a fellow educator.